I remember what it feels like. I remember the darkness and the weary, half-hearted prayers I prayed to God. I remember the brokenness and how I made a little home within it. I remember not being able to read my Bible without questioning, but where is your glory in me too, Lord? Suffering all while no one knew. Loving while nothing in me grew. Yeah, I know. I remember what it feels like to hear that my pastor took his own life. And the sting of that death was traumatic for a 14-year-old girl who was just starting her relationship with Christ. There is a war that is happening in the spiritual realm. Hell knows our names, but we identify the battle, and we're not going to sit by and watch our brothers and sisters be attacked in silence. We're going to war, baby. We're fighting back. So we're just going to start simply with a simple question that says, what does church mean to you?
Ooh, okay. What does church mean to me personally? Church is really like my safe haven. Like when I tell you sometimes it's like a rush to get to Sunday, church is really where I personally can feel free, where I love to be, where I am filled back up again. And so church, I would say, is my safe haven.
Honestly, church to me just means how you live and how you live for God. I don't think a building makes the church. I think the community inside the church is what makes the church.
Church to me is a safe haven. It's an outlet to just break free from all the stresses and worries and mishaps that happen throughout a week. You can come to church. But also, I don't like to think that church is just like on Sundays, or church is just a place and a time for morning worship. Like, I feel like you can have church anywhere. Like, I feel like it could break out anywhere, you know, as long as the Spirit moves. But if we're speaking as the societal norm of church, it's a place of gathering of God's people to come together and worship and to use their anointing to magnify Him and uplift His name.
What was your first experience like with church?
Well, I don't really remember. I grew up in a church. I am the daughter of 2 full-time ministers, and so they started the church. I was born September of 1997. They started the church March of 1998. So church is really all I've known. So it really was a part of my life. So I don't really necessarily, I can't necessarily pinpoint my first kind of experience because I literally grew up in the church.
My first experience in church, I think I was around 5 years old. And honestly, I think I was at a funeral. That was my first experience with the church. I was at my grandmother's funeral. And when I went there, it was just odd to me. Because I knew my mom and my dad and my grandma, they talked about God a lot. But actually being in a setting where, you know, God was talked about for like an hour or so, it was kind of strange. And then I also wanted to know, well, if God is supposed to be so good and so great, then why are all these people sitting here crying? Why is my grandmother dead? You know, I didn't really know the ins and outs of the Bible. I just knew, okay, we were at church and they were going to talk about God.
Well, I was raised in the church, sang in the choir, praise dance, ushered, led devotion, did all that whole type of thing growing up in Kansas City. But I will have to say that my first encounter with actually like being free in worship and being free to express like how I love God, to have like real church, I have to say is coming to Spelman. Freshman year, second semester, my friend invited me to a church called the Believer's House. And when I entered the space, it was like, wow, so this is what really church is. The church that I came from back at home in Kansas is very restricted. You know, it's not a place where it's accepted to be free and to express yourself how you want to. So I believe coming to the Believer's House was the first time I actually experienced church and what it's supposed to be and what God wanted to be, which is a safe haven for his people to worship freely, to cry, to laugh, to praise, to scream, to run around the sanctuary. So, yeah.
And how has the church community impacted your spiritual journey?
Church at home, I think because I grew up there, it was kind of like routine. So I knew how to do church. Like I knew like what to say, what to do. Like I knew church. And so it was really just a part of my life. So, but I feel like when I got to Spelman and freshman year when I did not have that community, I will say that it kind of hindered my relationship with God because like I didn't have anybody to hold me accountable or to keep me firm in my faith. But I will say Pinky Promise has tremendously changed my life. The people that I've been able to meet and come in contact with have helped me remain accountable. They have helped me remain grounded and firm. And I feel more comfortable in my faith being around other people who are also like on fire for God. It makes walking with God easier. When you walk alone, it's kind of hard because sometimes people are like, well, she's doing too much, or you can't necessarily relate to certain people. But when you have like that tight circle that I have been able to make with some girls from Pinky Promise, it has made like walking with God so much easier and so much more exciting, I will say.
It's given me a lot of strength. Because prior to coming to Spelman, I had some strength, but I still lacked low self-esteem and stuff like that. And my confidence was just not where it would be. I remember a lady asking me on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rank your confidence? And I was like, 4. And she was like, whoa, that's not good. So I think that being here and being in this spiritual community has helped me, 1, read the Bible a lot more. 2, it's helped me stay rooted in the Word. And also, I think that I've been able to gain a strong foundation as far as like who I am and what my purpose is.
What can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
The first time I felt the presence of God was second semester freshman year at the Believer's House. Pastor said, come to the altar. And I went to the altar, and literally like this heat like came over me, like a heat. I had never felt that before. I mean, now I feel it, and I know that's the Holy Spirit coming over me, but like that was the first time I felt the presence of God.
How did it feel?
It felt that feeling the presence of God. It felt like he was standing right in front of me. It's so hard to put into words. It's like, and I remember it was his presence, but now because I know it was his presence because I was hot and I felt like he was right in front of me. And I was like knelt down, and for some reason I couldn't lift my head up. Like I had this burden on me, feeling that I was so like burdened down and like buried down in like sin and like condemnation that like I couldn't lift my head up. Like it was like something was just like holding me down, and I felt like he was standing right in front of me, just his spirit. And that's when I first felt the presence of God, actually, like to actually feel his presence.
Like what was the like worldly feeling that you felt when you felt that?
I think I was just amazed. I was shook. I was in awe. It was like, wow, like he's here. Like, I don't know. But now when I feel the presence of God, oh, it's definitely at peace. Like, it's like, he's just like, I'm here. And he's like whispering, just like cradling me in his arms. It's very peaceful to be in the presence of God. And like every time I feel the presence of God, Every time I feel the presence of God, I cry. I'm an emotional person, period. But when you feel the presence of God, or when I feel it, it's like just this feeling of, wow, me, because I know that it's only by his grace and mercy that I'm able to even have that experience of feeling his presence. Like, salvation is not earned, and we have to understand that. Salvation is a gift. You just have to receive it.
So how would you contrast that feeling with, like, when you feel attacked by the enemy?
When I am attacked by the enemy, for me, it's always mental. Like, there'll just be things that I know that is not of God that just creeps into my mind.
The suicide of a California pastor is bringing national attention to all the pressure on men and women in ministry. I've seen a lot of reaction on Facebook and other social media, and we've also got some comments from the Lifeway CEO, Tom Rayner, who wrote about what he sees as our 5 main reasons for depression, and he talks about spiritual warfare, the surprising reality of pastoral leadership, a sense of inadequacy, critics, and bullies, and loneliness. Do you think pastors are, facing just an incredible amount of pressure that we might not even realize we're putting on them?
I believe that a battle that leaders in ministry face, the attack of people, I think. People can be really harsh. I remember one time Sarah Jakes was on Instagram, and she was, maybe it was her podcast, I can't remember if it was a post, I think it was her podcast, but she was saying how sometimes she has to take a step back from Instagram when some of her sermons go viral, because people really will attack the smallest thing she says, like in her sermon. And she was like, words still hurt me, like I'm still human. So I think the attack of people is something that leaders in ministry face.
If a pastor, has this issue where people are coming up to him saying, oh, you need to say this, or you don't need to say that. You don't tell me what I need to say. I listen to God. Because a lot of people, especially people in the church, they are going to try to run how the pastor does his church. They are going to look at the ins and outs of his life. There are a lot of people in the church who gossip and may have false accusations put on this pastor. They may have all of these rumors and stuff on this pastor, and depending on how popular the pastor is, that stuff can get around. I mean, if you look at Pastor John Gray and his wife, they're having all of this back and forth because of an interview that he had, because people's interpretations are just going left, and they're trying to make him out to be someone that he isn't. So it's just the pressure of being in this ministry and trying to please God, and at the same time having all of this backlash because you're not doing what people in this world want you to do, or you're not being what people in this world want you to be.
I bring it up because people see this. But what they didn't see is for the last 2 years, we weren't sure if we would even make it. We had to keep smiling, because even though we were struggling, and even though I was failing as a husband, I was already in front of the people, and the people can't really receive my brokenness, because where do leaders go when they bleed? Because sheep don't do well with blood, so I had to bleed alone. And what's strange is I traveled the whole world, and the Holy Ghost showed up, and people got saved, and me and my wife just kept smiling, and nobody knew that we were getting ready to get a divorce. Because as long as I kept producing, nobody cared what was happening at home.
How do you personally define spiritual warfare?
Child.
Oh, girl, now we getting into it. Oh my gosh. Whew. Okay, I gotta come back down.
Well, personally, when I've experienced spiritual warfare, it's been a lot of like sudden attacks, or like maybe a feeling that it like settling like comes over me. Like I remember last semester I was in my dorm room, and like all of a sudden I just started feeling really down. It really came out of nowhere, and I'm like, okay, this I'm under attack. And I knew I was under attack, but like I just didn't have the strength to kind of pray for myself. And so I sat in that feeling for a minute, and then I finally kind of got the strength to like pray. And I know the girl who like lives next to me thought I was crazy, because I literally like stood up and started like declaring like things out of my mouth. Like, no, devil, you're a liar. Like, I have the strength. I have the things I need. God is my strength. Like, I just started declaring and affirming things out of my mouth in that moment. And I was kind of loud. But moments after, I got a text message from my advisor, basically kind of like confirming everything that I've been kind of struggling with that day. Like, I was feeling kind of down, and she was kind of pouring back into me what I needed. And so I was like, wow, okay. I was definitely under attack, and the enemy knew that he could get me in that space, but she definitely came back. It was random too, and I'm like, wow, that was really God. She really came, and she sent me a text message that really encouraged me, and I'm like, wow, that was really right on time.
Because I know the enemy is going to attack me, before I leave my room every day, I literally have to say, like, God, I'm putting on the armor of your army, right? And as I step out of this space and enter this dark world, this dark, cruel world where I know Satan is roaming, I need you to kill every ounce of my flesh, right? Because I know that that's what Satan, like, the flesh is the reason why we sin. When we accept Jesus, our spirit becomes and our soul becomes one with God. However, the flesh is still wanting to do the things of the world, right? And so I know that Satan's going to come for that, but then also Satan's going to come for my mental. And when he's attacking, I get a little anxious. It's stress. It's the spirits that are not of God. You could just say that. It's anxiety, stress, worry. And then how many times in the Bible does God say, do not worry, right? And so then when I'm worrying, I know that that's just the enemy attacking me. Spiritual warfare literally feels like angels and demons going at it, like literally fighting and warring in your spirit. I've had multiple encounters with spiritual warfare, and I would go through these hysterical moments of like screaming, and like it's like you're out of control. From my experiences, it's like my body just like had no control, and like just my spirit was in place, but it was really like heaven and hell warring inside of me, and it's painful. It's painful and it's tiring. And for me, I went through four times within 6 months I was experiencing that. And like I said, back at home in my church, we don't talk about demons and like spirit things like that. We just come in and, you know, God's going to get you for sinning and you're going to go to hell, and then they just send you out the door. So I never knew back at home what that's like. But then coming here and finding a church home, that is when like I feel like my spirit actually started to like open up. And yes, spiritual warfare is a real thing, and it's crazy because you could walk around like everything's cool and dandy, but your spirit is at war. Like your spirit is torn, and that's how I was living. I was walking around thinking I was fine until one moment I just found myself not myself.
All in all, describe spiritual warfare as something that's kind of sudden. Maybe attacks, maybe feelings, maybe people who are maybe coming against you, feelings that you know aren't your own, thoughts that you know aren't your own. It's always random, and it always comes at a time where you may be needing to do something else, or you're about to do something like really important, maybe a ministry assignment, or you know, you're trying to focus on something, and like this sudden tension or this sudden moment of just feeling insecure, it's sudden.
It's a war every day. It is a war. Every day you get up, it is a battle. Like, it's nothing to play. Like, spiritual warfare is nothing to play with. Also, if the man, the home is not in alignment with God, and the enemy can attack him. For instance, like the home, like a household, the like father, the man of God is supposed to lead. So if the enemy can come for that leader, because he knows that the whole trajectory of that house will be, you know, screwed up. Same thing with like leaders in like the body of Christ. Leaders, you have their flock. If the enemy can come for that leader, he knows that he can disrupt that entire flock. He knows that he could get in, you know, and start messing up things. And so spiritual warfare definitely has played a role in our leaders taking their own lives. And it's so unfortunate because, like I said, they are attacked. Our leaders are attacked. Leaders are attacked on, like without a doubt they are attacked. And maybe sometimes we forget that. And just as much as they are on their knees praying for us, we should be on our knees praying for them.
And so I think actually taking the time out to, the least you can do is pray for the shepherd. Not just like, God, I pray that he has a great day. No, but like literally like go in for him or her, because the amount of spiritual warfare that they face daily is to the extreme that sometimes we don't even realize what goes on behind closed doors, because of course they're not going to share everything that they face with their body of Christ. With their congregation, I'm sorry. So I think actually praying for your leader is important. Also, not being so harsh on the leader. I mean, like, I know we make mistakes, they're human too. And so we're so quick to like jump on pastors if they make a mistake or like criticize everything they do. And it's just like, why are you so harsh on them? Like, they're human too. I understand that they are held to a higher standard and they should be aware of the things that they do. But I feel like we are really harsh on the men and women of God that God has called to preach the gospel to us. Like, keep your mouth off of them. Like, I mean, like, sometimes you may, they may make a mistake, but like, do God's prophet no harm. I feel like we are too comfortable with what we say, and we criticize our leaders too much.
It's unfortunate that leaders suffer in silence, for the Bible says when two come together, that's when healing comes, right? So I feel like that's why transparency is essential. But also it may be a trust thing. Maybe our leaders don't necessarily trust to confide in anyone, right? But we need people. People need people, right? I'm not just saying like cast your pearls to the pigs or anything like that, or just to be throwing out like all your business to everybody. I'm not saying that. However, that's why it's so important to have godly community, truly godly community, who you can confide in, who you know can pray, who you know can come for these demons, step on their head, crush the lion, trample the cobra. Like, that's why it's so important to have that godly community and those people that you can talk to so that you don't suffer in silence. Like, suffering in silence comes when you decide to shut your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to surround yourself around people who God has placed in your life, who God has sent. And finding godly community is difficult. It is a difficult thing. However, it's so essential, because if you don't, you will suffer. And like, I've dealt with that, suffering in silence. Like, I was walking around with these big, deep secrets, not telling anybody anything, not mommy, not daddy, nobody. And I was suffering. I was literally losing my mind. And then that's how I know what it feels to suffer in silence. You can lose your mind. And you can lose your mind to the point where you do decide to take your own life and you don't want to live anymore. But the suffering in silence, we beat that by coming together as people and letting people see the flaws, letting people see the hurts, letting people see the pains, letting people see what you are carrying at the moment.
I don't think there's anything wrong with professional counseling. I think it's good, but I think sometimes you may want to go to someone who's also a Christian, so they won't kind of they can give you, I guess, sound advice.
I honestly think that a lot of believers don't want to go to counseling and they rather stick to prayer, because we're told as believers, God got it. God is going to get you through this. Just pray and he's going to heal you. But at times, we take that part of the Bible to heart, but we don't take the part of the Bible that says, God does not want you to live in this world alone. He wants you to go out and seek others, because at times he may not talk to you directly. He may use others to talk to you. So that's why it's important to go out and, ask, okay, what am I supposed to do? Do you have any advice for me? I'm depressed. How can I help my mental health and whatnot? And God may shift their words so in a way you can hear him through them?
I almost took my own life, and I didn't, clearly, but and it had to do with spiritual warfare. I'm not going to even, like, I was going through, like, demonic oppression, and I was like, I'm crazy, I'm psycho, I need to go to I almost turned myself into, like, a mental ward, like, just literally here at Spelman.
You can never fill others from an empty cup. If you're not filling your own cup, then next thing you know, you're going to start breaking your cup eventually. Not only is it empty, but it's starting to shatter at the bottom because you're pouring so much out to others and you're not keeping enough for yourself.
At one point, I did not believe in rest. One point, I didn't. And there was another point in my life where I was being attacked in my sleep. So I was getting no rest. Literally, nightmares, demons, like, I'm like wrestling at night, and I was so tired and restless and dreary and weary. But now, once I've spoken that peace over my life and, like, you know, got that thing off of me, rest is so important. God manifested himself into flesh so he can know what it feels like to be man. So he knows what it's like to be restless. Jesus slept. You know what I'm saying? It's like he has these feelings of, oh, this is what it feels like to be hungry. This is what it feels like to be sad. I mean, Jesus cried when his best friend died, right? So he knows what it feels like to be a man. I think we sometimes forget that. No, God came, manifested in flesh. So he knows exactly what it's like to feel what we're feeling. He does.
People should cover their leaders first with just praying protection over them. I think that's really important. A sound mind, because I feel like a lot of times leaders pour out, but no one's really pouring back into them. And so sometimes when you're like on it, when you're feeling empty, the enemy will come in and attack you in your mind, or like put things in your mind. And that's why sometimes it may lead to depression, or you may see some leaders who are suicidal, and people are like, well, why are they suicidal? They preach the gospel, you know, da-da-da-da-da. But like when you're pouring out and you're empty, the enemy uses that as a way to come in and like attack you. And so I think it's important to pray that our leaders have sound minds, and pray over their strength. Like we get weak too, you know? Leaders get weak too. So I would say, again, praying over their strength, having a sound mind, praying over their protection. Because spiritual warfare is real. Witchcraft is real too. Like, there are people out there praying against your leaders, and so you need to be praying for them, because people are out there really trying to put attacks and spells and stuff. I'm not going to get into that. Over their leaders. Because it's real. It's real.
And I went into this full-on panic attack. If you've ever been in one or been around someone that's in the middle of a real panic attack, it's a scary thing. I was in fear for my life. I thought I was going to die. I was pacing back and forth. I wasn't making sense. Kayla was begging me to go to the hospital. I was refusing. I was refusing to take any medication. I was like, girl, I got a message to preach on Sunday. I'm not going to the hospital. I mean, and I was totally whacked out of my mind. It took 2 doctors on the phone to convince me to go.
Depression is happening among clergy. There are so many millions of clergy that quit the ministry every year. And a lot of that has to do with burnout and depression. They went in thinking that it was going to be a way to realize their dreams, and they found out that ministry saps everything you got.
When people go into the prayer room for your personal life, what would you want people to pray over you?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. If people were to go into the prayer room for me, I would ask for them to pray for the strength to endure, honestly. To keep going, to keep trusting God, keep trusting the process, and to not give up. I have my days where I'm just like, bump it all. Bump it all. But I would say that, like, no, pray for my endurance. Pray that I keep going. Pray that I don't fall and be like, bump all this.
First thing to remember is that we should honor depression presence. Depression in some form is epidemic among clergy and appears to be increasing. Most of us clergy will at some time experience depression, whether mild or severe. Secondly, we should honor depression's power. Depression in any form inhibits our functioning. It devours our pleasure. The things that we used to like, we don't like anymore. It tempts us toward activities that are more harmful than restorative. It seduces us at times to entertain thoughts of even killing ourselves.
I would say that it's okay to tell somebody. I think sometimes leaders may keep things to themselves because they're not supposed to be dealing with stuff like that, or, you know, they're leading flock, and so they're supposed to be the example. But I would say that it's okay to not be okay, or to have somebody that you trust to go talk to, like wise counsel. Maybe if you have a pastor who's over you, talk to him. Or it's okay, like we said earlier, to go get professional counseling. It's okay to talk to somebody about it. I think a lot of times we keep things in and we don't always verbalize things because maybe we don't trust people. People may be messy, but I think it's okay.
Like, actually go to a quiet space and just rest in the peace of God, and that will help you. It will help you. It will help you. I promise you it will help.